So what would you say makes Yorkshire Housing special?
I would definitely say it's people. So the people who go out day to day delivering services for customers relentlessly, really kind of passionate about what they do. So I think number one, it's definitely the kind of people and the passion that we have. But also I think our ambitions. We're very ambitious as a housing association. So the things that we want to do, the things we want to achieve for our customers, for our colleagues, for Yorkshire, for the areas that we work in, I think that is what makes us stand out as a housing association. The things that we want to do, the difference we want to make, the risks that we kind of take in terms of doing things differently, doing things bigger, bolder, stronger, and actually sometimes getting it wrong, but then looking at how we can kind of get it right, that I think makes Yorkshire Housing different. We're not middle of the road. We don't want to be average. We want to be the best. And I think that's what, we've got behind us.
And we see that from a lot of the people that come and talk to us about, joining Yorkshire Housing or come in for interviews or want to work with us in different capacities. And I think we see that people are genuinely attracted to Yorkshire Housing because of the ambition that we've got and because we're bold and we're not afraid to do things a bit differently. I think that we can see that sets us apart, on a number of levels. So I agree.
For me, it's about being in God's own country. Yorkshire's the best place in the world to be, isn't it? So why not also have an organisation that really sort of plays to that whole Yorkshireness, if you want to call it that. So, our people in Yorkshire are fantastic. This is the highlight of my career, genuinely the highlight of my career, because I wanted to come to an organisation that was down to earth, that was real, that did the right thing, not just the easy stuff, which is perhaps some people in our world do. But also just that you look at Yorkshire, it's 100 miles north to south, 100 miles east to west. It's the most diverse area of the country. You've got inner city right through to rural hamlet type environment and everything in between. And the people that are here is what makes it. But I think we've also played on that Yorkshire tone of voice, and I think that has appealed to people who perhaps didn't think of a career in housing and have joined us and have brought a whole raft of different skills and experience and also just lived experience as well. So I think that's enabled us to attract some fantastic talent, some great people, from all over the country. And indeed, we've had people working for us abroad. We tried to build a wall across so that we stop those people from Lancashire coming across, but a few of them got over the barbed wire, I have to say. But we've even made them welcome, and I think they've even managed to make a positive contribution to us. But I think it's just the fact that we're just what I class as just real or authentic or whatever word you want to put to it. But actually, going back to what Nina and Vicky have said, it's that ambition. It's about the fact that people want to be part of this journey. That for all 850 of us, I want that to be the highlight of everybody's career. That all of them say, you know what, all my career, all the jobs I've had, my time at Yorkshire Housing was the best or amongst the best of my whole working career.
Love that.
I love it. I think for me, and I say this a few times, I'm very fortunate I choose who I work with. And there's very few clients who I actually leave my office for. It's true. I don't, because I have a whole team, but I've deliberately chosen to work. And there was something, I talk about je ne sais quoi, there's something about the energy and the vibe, yeah? And when Vicky came and joined you guys, she kind of projected this energy, and I was kind of intrigued. What is it about this organization? Because you're a housing association, yeah? And I've worked with many housing associations, and you've never got that level of energy or excitement, but it was here, and it's very palpable. And so for me, it's about the ambition. I think two things: the ambition and the disruptive. Those two things, yeah, made me really lean in and say, yeah, I want to be part of this journey. And I think the good thing is that is lived up to the expectations. With any organization, nothing is absolutely perfect, but what you have is this kind of drive and this ambition. And it's not just amongst the leadership, but it's actually trickling down the organization. And I think that means that there's something very special here. And every time we've done a session, we said that the potential here is enormous. Yeah, it is. It's incredible. So that for me, it's a standout organization. It really is.
Thank you. What about you, Melissa?
I'd echo what's been said, but I think what you touched on, Nick, the fact that people are real and authentic, and that has been so apparent. And, I've had the opportunity and the privilege to work with senior leadership team, heads of and managers, and I've witnessed that at every level. I think people bring themselves to work.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't see that often in organisations. You kind of get this group think and this culture that they all kind of adhere to. But here, it's great because you get the energy and you get the differences of opinions, and sometimes you need that friction. Yeah. And you get that at Yorkshire Housing because people aren't afraid to speak their truth, and that for me really stands out.
I think that really helps with the communities that we serve. In terms of our ambition to be really representative, to be real, to have people with all kinds of different experience, all kind of different challenges, all kind of different, opinions that we're all harnessing in for good, for the right way to kind of improve what we're doing. And we've seen an awful lot of colleagues during the journey, of this programme. So, yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
One of the things I think we've focused on a huge amount in the time that Nick and I and Vicky have all been working at Yorkshire Housing has really been around the values and the behaviours of the people that join us, and we put a huge amount of weight and focus on that. Looking at the Yorkshire Housing values and sort of what we stand for, and sort of creating that initial vision was one of the first pieces of work that certainly I picked up when I came to work here, and we put a lot of effort into really thinking through what does a Yorkshire Housing person look and feel like, and sorry, that's probably the wrong thing to say, Joe. It was so important for us to get that right and really nail down those behaviours, and then test that through recruitment and keep testing that while people are sort of on their journey with us. And I think that's one of that authenticity that shines through has really come from knowing what works for us, and being able to bring a lot of difference and diversity into the organisation with people from all sorts of different backgrounds. And we're not interested in, sort of where people have come from. It's what they can bring and what they can give us, but providing that they really sort of, I guess, hold that essence of what makes Yorkshire true. So for me, we've got a lot of people that are very authentic, are very real, are very passionate, are very driven, but are very decent at the same time. And I think for me, that's what makes coming into work every day a joy, because, you're working with people that generally get it and want to be part of that. How do we generally make things better for our customers, and how do we generally make a difference in society? And that's, you spend your best waking hours at work, you spend most of your waking time thinking about work if you're not at work, or it's on your mind in some way. And to work in an environment where you don't feel that people are genuinely in it for the right reasons, and you've got that kind of sort of truth right up to the top of the organisation, I think it makes that quite difficult, doesn't it? So, yeah, it's a big deal for me.
And I would absolutely echo that, and that our values haven't changed. Some organisations change them, shape them, redefine them. Ours are still the same as they were 5 years ago. We've used them as the backdrop to customer obsession. We use it, as you've said, within recruitment. We push it through into development. We push it through into how we reward and recognise and celebrate our colleagues. So it's that consistent thread, for want of a better word, running through what we do and how we do it to be the best. And we really use them. They're not just stuck on a wall. They're not just stuck on a shelf. Actually, we really do use them. We come back to them, as often as we can. So I think that's really important as well.
I think the other thing for me that makes it special is the depth and breadth of talent. Yeah. So I'm in awe of some of the people that I work with. They're far better at what they do than I could ever hope to be. And I suppose in some ways that's my job, isn't it? To sort of, build that team around me. And but they've really bought in to something that's quite revolutionary for our sector anyway, in terms of that vision. And I really do respect them for that, because that's quite hard to say we're going to completely turn on its head the accepted norm for how you run a housing business and do it in a completely different way. Are you up for that? And once people sort of, do get that, you can see that momentum will continue regardless of what else changes around the organisation. And I feel incredibly privileged. I've got a very, very supportive board. So they enable me, you talked, Akin, about, disruptive. They very much give me the freedom and flexibility to go and do things and to fail. And there are very few boards that would let you fail, albeit within a controlled environment, just to be clear. But also, I've got a team around me who are just, I think, amongst the best that I've ever worked with. And my job is just to say that's the direction of travel and just let them crack on and deal with it. And that's what we've got in the business. That's what makes it different. That's why when I speak to my peers or when I speak to other organisations, I come back and feel so incredibly proud, privileged to work here. And I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Maybe AKD, but that's a conversation I'll into.
I don't want to make it all about the survey says, but what you've just said there is absolutely one of the key points that comes out in our colleague experience survey year after year, that people really get behind and believe the vision that your top tier, your kind of senior leadership team are, defining, pushing out there. And actually that's the thread that's keeping us together. And year after year, since I've been here in the last 5 years, yesterday actually, it's my 5-year anniversary yesterday. I know, happy work anniversary. Time and time again, that's really, it's important to colleagues that they see it, they believe it, but crucially they want to be part of it and they want to make that difference. And I think that's, some of our secret sauce.
Yeah.
And the fact that some colleagues come from completely different backgrounds. Like I've had a farmer in my group, you'll know who. Amazing, like getting so much tips and tricks on where to buy your meat from and all sorts of stuff. And then people from all sorts of different backgrounds, but historically within social housing, people tend to fall into it as a career. It's never an aspiration, and then they stay there. Yeah. But what I've seen at Yorkshire Housing are people from all walks of life. So the ones that have had the longevity within the industry, and then those who have come from a completely different industry, but that's what shapes it and brings so much difference and diversity of thought. So we've touched on customer obsession already. Customer obsession is something that I've dreamt about. And it's been the buzzwords really that has taken us over the last 12 months and will continue beyond. When we think about customer obsession, what would you say it actually means to Yorkshire Housing?
We've been talking about customer obsession for much longer than 12 months. And the journey started when we were thinking around what type of organisation do we want to be and how are we going to start really taking ourselves from a very traditional organisation, sort of working in a way very similar to a lot of our peer group, to how do we really start becoming the best in our class, and how do we start doing something that's a little bit different. We started thinking around it from a culture perspective, actually, and we were thinking, what do we really need to do to start putting customers back at the heart of our business? We've become very transactional, and it's been more about delivering a transactional service than delivering a sort of relationship with customers. And it goes back for me to the very heart of why we exist as housing providers in the modern world. It's about providing people with a home that they may not have the means to be able to afford as a sort of market rent property or through other means. And we exist to serve a big chunk of the population. And it's all about giving our customers the best possible service and thinking about the types of behaviours that we would expect our people, anybody who works for Yorkshire Housing, to display, and how they deliver that in a way that makes us feel proud. So we started off thinking about what does that look like from a culture and behaviours perspective, and then started building around that what do we need to do differently as an organisation in terms of our structures, our processes, our systems, and all things like that. And it lent perfectly into, I guess, the bigger vision for the organisation around how do we really start changing the whole, nature of how social housing is delivered, which is the big ambition. It's the, getting to the preemptive state, which Nick will no doubt talk about as we go through this, because we don't see the two things as separate. We needed to get to a different place with how we were delivering those services to customers in order for us to be able to then start to really realise the potential, I guess, of the business over time. So that's kind of the starting point for it.
Nina's absolutely sort of right that it's the foundation upon which the whole sort of transition and the journey that we're on is based on. So you've got to get, as like any foundation, you've got to get that solid. For me, customer obsession, you can call it whatever title you want to stick on it, but basically what I want is, in your life outside work, you have very few organisations that you have experiences where you go, wow, and you're made to feel special. Most organisations, as Nina has said, it's transactional. You feel like it's just, a process. Well, there are a couple of businesses who make you feel special each and every time you engage with them. And actually, that's what I want for Yorkshire Housing. I want that same feeling that I get when I deal with, and I will name them, when I deal with the likes of First Direct, who I've banked with for, 28 years now. And that's crazy, isn't it? That I feel really positive about an organisation that makes money out of holding my money. When you actually unpack it, you go, that's really bizarre. But every single person in those 28 years I've engaged with at First Direct, it's like they've got magic fairy dust and they sprinkle it over every single person. And I think it's that sort of experience that I'm after. And the other one is Apple. The Apple experience. You go, you buy something from Apple, and if if you don't like it or if it's not for you, you go back and there's no long protracted returns process. They just take it off you, sort of scan your receipt, the money's straight back in your account. They don't do what others do and make you wait 2 weeks to refund you. That's like, well, they don't wait 2 weeks for me to pay them, do they, for it? So I never quite understand that. But it's that whole process. It's frictionless, it's easy. And you actually don't have that inner dread before you think, right, okay, I've got to go and contact my bank, or I've got to go and buy yet another thing from the Apple shop, as my wife would say. So it's that experience. It's that experience of people just thinking, this is easy and I'm made to feel special and I'm listened to and it's individual to me. And that for me is what customer obsessed means.
We started thinking about, in order to create that experience, and we looked at what some of the world's best organisations are doing in this space and really what's the difference between a customer-focused organisation and a genuinely customer-obsessed organisation. And what we found from, lots of research, lots of looking around at those really great examples was it's about how do you build that mindset right in at the very DNA of your organisation, at the heart of the organisation. And then, it becomes just what we do. It becomes how we approach every problem. It becomes how we approach every sort of interaction with our customers. And from that we can then start, really aiming for great big stuff, and we can start doing things really differently. But it is that mindset thing. So we spent a lot of time really thinking about, what does that look like? What does that mean? What do we want Yorkshire Housing customers to see differently, but most importantly to feel differently? And that was one of our sort of early, I suppose, interpretations to answer your question around what is customer obsession. It's how we make our customers feel, and they should feel special and they should feel valued and they should feel important to Yorkshire Housing. And for us, I think it was recognising quite a difficult recognition really that probably a lot of our customers just don't feel like that right now. So how are we going to build that mindset into our 850 people to get it to really shift?
Never in my entire career has a phrase divided an organisation as much as customer obsession, I have to say. So we spent quite a lot of time, exactly as Nina said, bedding it into the organisation, getting colleagues to understand. And I think for me, building on everything that the points that both Nick and Nina have raised, It's absolutely how we make customers feel, but it's also how we make colleagues feel within all of this. Because to be truly customer obsessed, you've got to feel that passion. So the people in First Direct probably love what they do, you know, and that shines through. And I think that when we started to look at the culture and the values and the behaviours, how do we make it easy for each other across the organisation? Because making it easy for each other means that it's going to be easy and seamless for our customers. They will feel that we're connected, that we're not working in silos. So that kind of equal attention to both colleague obsession, for want of a better phrase, and customer obsession. And it's absolutely how we make customers feel. It's not about always saying yes. And I think that was a big mindset shift for us to get across with colleagues, because I think a lot of our colleagues interpreted customer obsession as obviously they're going to get everything they want in the way that they want it, when they want it. We can't do that. So the biggest, mindset shift for us has been, you can say no, you can say not now, you can say, something different. It's the way in which you say, the way in which you listen, that you don't jump to assume, that you treat that individual like a person in the way you would want to be treated as a person, with an organisation or in an organisation. So fundamentally, that's at the heart of it for me, how we make each other feel as well as our customers.
I think, I'll come to Akin in a moment, I think some of the friction when we were delivering the message down through to managers was around the words obsession. Some people just couldn't own it because it wasn't comfortable. So a lot of the conversations we had were around that. And ultimately, it's about serving, isn't it? It's about serving our customers, serving our colleagues, and seeing each other as customers. And that mindset shift, we could see the ripple effect, and it started to happen. There's still a way to go, but it is definitely a mindset shift.
Yeah, and part of the term, we talked about it a lot in the early days. It was very deliberate because we wanted it to grab people's attention and create that and spark that debate and that, that discussion around, well, what does it really mean? Because, I think lots of Hollywood movies would have you think that obsession is a negative, and actually going to turn that into a positive because it's so important,
I can't tell you how many people went away and said, I've looked up what obsession means. What you had to look up what obsession meant. I've defined it, and they bring it on a piece of paper. Well done. So it did create a buzz, intentionally created that kind of buzz, that almost that burning platform, isn't it?
And again, it's disruptive. I think for me, there was a session that we did, and Gavin talked about the memories created in a home. Yeah? And it stood out so powerfully for me that actually, if you think about the memories in terms of the first time you step into the home, the first time you kind of sleep in a bed for some people, the first time I own this, etc. And the way in which she spoke about memories, and especially because they kind of relate, it was just like, it was so powerful, and it's like, that's it. Yeah. It really was about how do we help people to create amazing memories, in this space. And for me, that was really the thing that stood out for me, and all the other bits, but that kind of packaged it in such a really powerful way.
One of our customers said something very similar as part of the customer crew, and she said that she's a midwife, and she's one of our very, very new customers as part of the kind of crew. And she says that in a busy shift, she might have to deliver between 9 and 12 babies. She can't, by the 10th baby, just go, can't be bothered with this. Oh, I'm just checking out. Yeah. You know what? Oh, I don't know what it is. It might be a boy. It might be a girl. You've got to treat everyone like it's their first baby. It's my first delivery. And that really stood in terms of what we want to achieve with customer obsession. It might be a last call of the day, but it's their first conversation with you as an organisation and as a customer. So just hold that in your mind. So we're trying to bring that energy, that essence, that kind of ethos into how we work with each other and with our customers.
And it's not rocket science. It's just about spinning the relationship around and going, how would you view this if you were the person receiving this? If you're walking in the customer's shoes, looking at this through a customer lens, whatever phrase you want to put to it, how are you made to feel? That's the thing. Not the transaction, not did we do whatever we said we were coming to do or whatever. How do you feel when that Yorkshire Housing colleague leaves your front door? How are you then feeling about us as an organisation? And that's what it's about. And I think Vicky's also right. I think the bit that has taken probably longer to land than the customer element is that there are 850 customers internally i.e. us, each other, in between ourselves, how we work, as well as the 20,000 homes that we manage and 50,000 people that live in those homes.
Really, I think what was important was, and I think Nina was really keen on this, was that a lot of people thought they were customer obsessed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was one of the things we had to break, because like it was almost like, no, you're not. Yeah, but actually, and I think some people really took umbrage with that, because they thought that they were operating at a great level, and actually, in this picture, it wasn't. And taking people on that journey, yeah, was in the initial bit, I think, quite difficult, because obviously, you know what I mean, like it's a bit of an insult, isn't it? I am customer obsessed. Yeah, no, you're not. But gradually, I think people have had their kind of lens widens and started to look in the mirror a bit more and face up to reality. Actually, we're not as good as we thought we were.
Yeah.
And I think, the first, that's a really important part of kind of progress and kind of facing up to a truth, which is sometimes difficult to hear, but then being willing to actually push through and actually start to make the difference. And I think that's been a really important bit. It's almost like that was there was a switch there, wasn't it, where some people started to recognize, actually, yeah, we're not there yet.
It's a tough one, that, because everyone in the organisation is genuinely, to a certain extent, really cares, and are nice people. And I think people blurred being customer obsessed with being a nice person and just doing their job. So we've had to spend time as part of this journey. And I think we've learned a lot as to, how we might do this or do things differently if we were to repeat this or do this elsewhere. What we need to get right from the outset, and that really kind of being explicit about the behaviours and explicit about what that looks like in practice has been the thing that I think has changed people from thinking customer obsession is about being nice and turning up and just doing your job, as opposed to making it easy, how you've made that person feel, whether you've listened to them, whether you've been able to empathise with them, not just by agreeing with them, or stepping into their shoes, but actually by listening to them and believing them, and then doing something about that, not necessarily just jumping to an assumption or doing what you think they want you to do. So, yeah.
Touching on that, even though it's an organisational shift and it's a change of direction, the work had to be done individually, because a lot of people had to remove some of those biases, some of those beliefs. There was a statement that Vicky found, I don't know where you found it, and I can't remember it word for word, but it was about empathy. You've talked about putting yourself in other people's shoes, but it was about real empathy happens when you can listen to somebody and understand them, even when your own feelings, thoughts and opinions are rising up, for you to overcome that and still believe them. That's real empathy. And you could see that the work had to be done individually and not just looking at it as a group, as a group exercise, because some individuals within the organisation had a lot of work to do internally, and we could see that happening, which was really refreshing.
And linked to what you and Akin have said on that, I think that's where our Yorkshire heritage does come into play, because we are direct and honest. Some people call it blunt, but I just call it direct and honest. And I remember kicking off the programme and standing in front of everybody and saying, about the programme and where we were going. And there were two things. Firstly, people were sort of saying, "Oh, is this the latest fad? This will be a priority for 2 weeks, and then there'll be something else." And I think I'm pleased that we've maintained that focus, because that was the promise I made to them. But I also gave them a reality check, because I remember standing in front of everybody and saying, right now, each and every one of you are thinking, there are 849 other people in this organisation who need to change because they're not customer obsessed, but I'm okay. And actually, none of us were anywhere near where we needed to be. And I think it was just being able to be really open and blunt and straight with people about the fact that the organisation was nowhere near where we needed it to be. And that meant that each and every one of us needed to go on a journey to change how we thought and how we operate and as individuals in work, but also it will have had a positive spin-off, I'm sure, for people outside work as well, because you can't separate the two.
And part of the reality check was, it wasn't that we were doing everything badly, and it wasn't that we didn't have on a daily basis like individual examples of people doing, going out of their way and doing really heroic things in some cases for our customers. It was just, we weren't consistently thinking a kind of customer first and putting the customer right at the heart of decision making, whether that was in an individual interaction with the customer, whether that was, you know, sort of bigger design of I guess, the business. And some of that, like, realization that, yeah, you're doing some stuff really well. We're not beating people up here saying we do it all terribly, but some of that we've got to start really thinking differently about how we're approaching it was a big part of, I think, that learning journey at the beginning, and sort of helping people recognise what we need to do differently. And, you know, we've got some really hard and fast performance results that we can point to and say they weren't where we needed them to be. You know, our complaints performance wasn't anywhere close to where we can say we're genuinely proud that we're getting things right first time. It still isn't where it needs to be, and for us that's one of the key indicators, really, that, you know, we need to really start understanding we are, as a business now, because of the, you know, the focus on customer obsession. We're starting to do some much more you know, intense and intelligent and really useful work in understanding what's behind some of those performance metrics, because we can see that complaints isn't where we want to be, customer satisfaction, which is a perception survey ultimately, but customers are telling us that we're not getting it right for them, and we can see, you know, now with a lot more data and a lot more insight into what's driving some of that stuff, and start to put it right. But we're not going to rest, even though I think we've got ourselves to a point where we've got a good base level of understanding of the difference, as we said, between doing a good enough job, you know, we care about our customers, and you know, through to genuinely being customer obsessed. You know, there's a lot to do. Probably never going to quite get there, to be honest.
It's a journey, isn't it, Vicky? It's Vicky's favourite word.
I think the inputs didn't always match the outcomes, the outputs, that people were nice and approaching things and trying to do their best, but actually something just wasn't always consistently right in how we were making customers feel with things. And it goes into everything that we do. And I think for me, it's part of that learning journey. It's about how we're connecting our people back to purpose. And that, I think, is really relevant, whether you work in finance, whether you work in recruitment, whether you work in, I'm trying to think of in development, you know, how we all play a part in making things brilliant for customers. And I think there was to shine a light on that as being, you know, a key outcome of the programme, for people needing to work together and seeing what they do today or this hour, how that impacts customer positively or negatively. You know, so how we tying people together and harnessing them behind customer needs.
Thank you, Vicky. So you chose to partner and collaborate with AKD Solutions. Tell us a bit about the work that we've done, the program that we've delivered, and why you decided to choose AKD.
And be nice.
Be honest.
Always. Right. Honest or nice. You choose which you want.
Those two Barrys.
I was always clear when Nina and I were started this journey talking about what we needed to change. I was always clear that I wanted somebody who understood us, who would work alongside us, not just come and deliver a sheep dip customer care program that you've put all 850 folks through and then everybody's magically transformed. I didn't want any of that nonsense. Actually, what I wanted was somebody to come along and understand us as an organisation, understand why we were doing this, but also help us to shape that. And I think that it's a bit of a naff phrase, but that co-designing element to this was really, really important, because we had an idea about what it could or should look like, but we aren't the experts in this. You've done this. You've seen other examples of where things have worked really well and where they haven't. And so I was always clear that I wanted somebody that we were going to work alongside, who would understand us, who would have a bespoke program that was unique and designed around our needs, but also that was in it for the long run. So I didn't want a sort of, smash and grab sort of, we've done 850 people, they're all now magically transformed, here's a massive bill. Actually, what I wanted was somebody who we could adapt the program with as it moves along. And I think that, for me, is what it's done in bucket loads. I think the programme, I think we probably all admit, is nothing like what we first started talking about, because we've moved. It's a bit like, for me, it's a bit like a sailing boat that tacks in the wind. There are times when you're going off here, but you know what the overall destination is. But to get there, sometimes you've got to take a bit of a different journey. And I think the thing that you folks have done incredibly well, despite not being from Yorkshire, is to understand what's really important to us in terms of culturally how we operate, what's in our DNA, and you've become part of the Yorkshire Housing family. It's great. It is great. My colleagues know I don't do physical contact normally with people, but I want to see you guys. I give you a big hug because you are part of that. So I think for me, and I know Vicky and Nina will have their own views, but for me, this was about a long-term journey and a long-term relationship that would enable us, that understands us and enables us to get towards that end point. We will, as Nina said before, we'll never, ever reach that end point. And the point which we do reach that, if we think we've ever done that, you need to tell us we're deluded. You really do need to tell us that, because nobody ever gets to that end point. But actually, it's the journey that is absolutely key. And I think the other thing that you've done is helped convince the rest of the business that when we said this was a priority, and many didn't believe it would be maintained as a priority, that we have maintained that focus. And I think the thing I hear back from colleagues is, we didn't think you'd stick with this. We're glad that you have. And actually having AKD along has given us a sounding board, almost a sort of a third party to have conversations that probably couldn't have with other colleagues who they may work with day to day. So for me, I think it's the relationship, Melissa, that's the most important thing of all, I think, genuinely. And for me, that has absolutely delivered in bucket loads.
And when we first started on this journey, as Nick said, I was absolutely determined not to do that kind of chalk and talk training, and to find a provider that would do something fundamentally different and disruptive and really help shake up our thinking. There are so many, off the shelf, customer experience kind of training programs or organisations that, when you actually look at the content, it's I've seen it before. I saw it 10 years ago. Where's it, how has it really developed? So it was a by chance conversation, because you were working with us on a different piece of work, weren't you? Nothing to do with customer obsession per se. And it just came out of that conversation that, okay, this is a part of your business that you've got a lot of experience and sort of expertise in. And what I found, just in that early conversation, is you didn't immediately go into, right, I've got a program, I've got a plan, I know what to do. You spent a lot of time really listening and really understanding, well, what are you trying to achieve? Which for me was quite refreshing, because, Vicky and I both have worked with a lot of training providers over the years who have just got something in the bottom of their, metaphorical filing cabinet that they just want to sort of slightly tweak and add Yorkshire Housing logo on. And you didn't start like that. So I listened to you straight away, and I felt confident that we can start something. And then as we got into it, one of the things that's really helped you stand out for me and really made the whole process so memorable is you've not held back at all. And I look at both of you, but I'm particularly looking at Apple, because I could definitely vouch. Because I remember in some of those early conversations, particularly we brought Nick into the conversation, and the three of us were kind of all throwing things that we need at you, and you'd started some of the conversations with our senior team, and your feedback to us, I think, has always been incredibly honest and incredibly authentic, and I'm sure sometimes not easy for you to give to us, because we needed a bit of a rain check and a reality check, didn't we, on where we were, and where we might get to in what period of time. So that was so valued, wasn't it? Just having someone that was kind of, guys, this is what you need to be focusing on. So that built a lot of trust that enabled us to feel, a lot more comfortable to sort of let you guys be the experts that you are, and go off and start designing something for us that I felt was going to make that difference. And, while we might have stage managed the first couple of sessions a bit more, by about the third one, I was kind of, I don't need to get involved in this because these guys know what they're doing. And, you're starting to really get to understand our business and really get to, to understand those nuances that we're going to need to deliver. And the iterative process that we've gone through then to design the programme, while that doesn't always fit with my kind of need for control and that need for where are we going and what's next, I think it's really worked for us because we needed to almost go on a journey ourselves, understand the sentiment in the room, understand where our leaders were getting to, and kind of what's the right thing to do next. The other thing which I think has been fantastic, it links into that honest feedback, is you interjected some really, really fantastic kind of, guest speakers, and some of the challenging thinking that's been brought into those sessions, again, has been the difference for me between an off-the-shelf, you've all got to develop this skill and this kind of mindset, to actually you guys just need to be put in a tumble dryer for an hour and come out the other side, because that's where you're going to really start to get some of the rich thinking. So bringing in people like Hugh Brasher from the London Marathon was really a stroke of genius for me at that point in our programme, where we needed a fresh injection of something that was going to make us all sit upright and go, wow, we need to stop getting so comfortable because we've still got a lot to do, and we needed that different thinking, didn't we? So yeah, we got you got our trust early. We bought in because you weren't trying to force something down our throats, and then we haven't even got on to the delivery because there were lots of really real positives, and sort of looking at you, Melissa, particularly with some of the the less straightforward sessions that you were able to facilitate for us and read the room and really get what was going on in the room, and being adaptable enough to be able to change your approach. I think sometimes midway through a session was really what we needed, and thank you. Yeah.
And you have to ask yourself why he passed those to you, those more difficult sessions. You need a conversation after this.
Vicar, there is so many reasons. Number one, Akin is wonderful. Number two, Akin is wonderful.
Come on.
Do I get paid now?
We'll edit that out. Definitely edit that out.
Akin is really wonderful. I can't echo enough what Nina and Nick have already said. For me, it's absolutely that partnership. And, as a learning and development professional, you kind of go into these things thinking, yeah, we know what we could do. I'm quite good at this. And actually, you've helped me to sharpen my professional thinking and to stretch the boundaries of what I might have delivered as an internal, colleague in the organisation. And that partnership and that kind of co-delivery, that kind of co-crafting of something, that we know the organisation, but you guys are helping us to be bigger and bolder and more ambitious. I think that was really key for me. The things that you've brought in, and we'll get on to that, have just been genius, and that whole kind of how we've done things differently. And it hasn't been a customer care programme. It hasn't been something we could just get off the shelf and just keep delivering. But one of our values is having fun. And I think that's what you guys bring in bucket loads. And as Nick said, having you guys in shows that we're serious about this. They're not just rolling me out to deliver the same old stuff again that they can whack on a shelf. We've done something. We started with a leadership team up front and centre, got them to kind of challenge their thinking, and then we showcase that to the rest of the organisation. And you guys helped us do that in a way that we wouldn't have done on our own. We wouldn't even have dared. I can get into the speakers. There's been so many standout moments, but yeah, we'll pick those up. But for me, it's that partnership, that challenging what we've done, bringing difference and having fun.
The other thing I'd say is that, when you look at your diary at work and you see things in there, and some things may go, oh, right. And some things are like, when I see either you, Melissa, or Akin, you in my diary, I smile and I think, good, I'm in for a good session. Even though the conversations sometimes might not A, go where I thought they were going to go, or B, sometimes they're not comfortable because you're challenging and saying, we need to, have you thought about this? Why is that route your preferred way? But it stimulates thought. But I think that unfiltered reaction about when you look at your diary, and then you've got to think, why do I feel like that? Why do I feel that way about you guys? And I think you've developed a level of trust. I've got a huge amount of respect for your knowledge and your opinion and your views. But come back to what Vicky said, we have a laugh as well. And sometimes, you take life too seriously. And just sometimes you've just got to have that relationship where you feel comfortable and confident with people, where you can just literally be yourself, but actually also have a bit of a giggle as well.
I mean, and lucky for you, Aki, all those other trainers that Nina and I have got them in the bottom of our filing drawer, they weren't available.
They do want to work with you. I'm moving on.
Yeah. I think for me it's about the trust. I think the trust has been incredible because you trusted us. You took a risk because we were coming up with stuff it wasn't conventional. It was very much, let's give it a go. And in the main, it's worked. And I think it's been the relationship. So for me, I value relationships more than anything, yeah? And because we had that relationship, and because we could be so candid, and because you gave us permission to say, be creative within parameters, yeah? But literally, whatever crazy thing we thought of, you trusted us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's been a joy. And that's why for me, it's been like and it literally has been from day one. That's why it's been a joy, because it's easy. Because there's not a resistance doesn't mean we've got everything right, but it's just been easy to work with. It's just been a joy.
And I think that connectivity back to the work you were doing with us around inclusion really helped, that you saw customer obsession hand in hand with how we work with our colleagues and how inclusive we make ourselves as an organisation to our colleagues, but also to our customers. For me, it was a given from the outset that you got that, and that was really important.
I think that trust piece is really important because obviously Akin already had a relationship with you before I'd met you. And I remember being at the AKD office and we were like planning what we would do for the programme. Do you remember that session? And so I had to look through almost Akin's lens of what the culture is to know, okay, what ideas we're bringing to the table, will they land? And I remember having this idea of that whole rich house, poor house kind of construct and looking at, could we have a challenge where, directors stay in a house? And I remember looking around the room thinking, has this landed? And people were like, that might be going a bit too far. But Akin was like, no, yeah, let's do that.
Absolutely.
And I was nervous thinking, how will this be received? But it was received so well.
As soon as Akin told me that, I was like, yes, we are taking this, we're going to do this. Yeah.
But that straight away gave me insight into the type of organisation you are and the culture. And then that opened the door to say, okay, we can stretch the parameters, we can have fun, and the rest is history, really.
I think the challenges part of the programme, that particularly, we had our exec director for finance and governance and our director of customer success staying overnight, and I think there were a couple of others actually, weren't there? But I remember particularly Andy and Gavin just kind of looking at each other across the table going, right then, do you snore? But I think that was really well planned into the programme at the right time, because I think that was almost the trigger for a bit of a change and shift of direction in a lot of our senior leaders' thinking, to do some of that, really experience it in a different way, because we've all been out for shadowing days with colleagues in different roles and sort of seen and heard various bits of our process kind of lived through, but the challenges exercise I think added a whole nother dimension, didn't it? And I remember coming back into the environment where everyone had done their challenges and we all came back together, and it was people sharing stories and sharing what they'd learned, and I just sat at the back of the room and thought, we know everything really. We've got an example or an anecdote of every part of our process, and probably every one of our pain points has been flushed out as a result of however many leaders going through this exercise. So yeah, I thought that was a really powerful ability. And some of the storytelling, was one of the things we have developed and need to keep developing as an organisation, is around our ability to tell stories. And I saw some really powerful moments. So Hannah Jowett, our head of comms, came back with, you know, almost quite an emotional story about, you know, a customer that had, you know, she'd just opened her up by just asking a few casual questions, and all of this stuff just came out that this customer had never shared with us before, and we were able to then go in and actually help, and you know, it was really powerful for everybody to hear that sort of firsthand, wasn't it?
I think the challenges have been, for me, one of the standout moments in this for so many reasons, and I think they're so simple. You know, you write them down, you think, of course they should be doing this. So sure, it's almost like kind of back to the floor stuff in a very intentional kind of planned way. So simple, but yet so powerful, as Nina's just said, that it gave our leadership team, who, you know, will have known some of this, but did they really understand it? Did they really see it, what it felt like to be a colleague working at the front line, or to be a customer in one of our properties? You know, did they smell it? Did they see it? Did they feel it? And I think that very simple kind of construct of doing the challenge and getting people out in a safe and supported way, but in a challenging way, helped to bring so much energy, because I felt energy in that room when they kind of presented back, but also that kind of, we've done it. You know, that we're not asking you to do something we wouldn't do. We've sat and, we've been in customers' homes, we've gone out, we've spoken to colleagues, we've kind of shadowed, etc. It gave the programme almost a different kind of level, a different kind of parapet to kind of work from. And we used so much of that in the managers' sessions and the kind of, you know, the conversations we've had. We took some of those stories into what we did with managers. Heads of service and directors went and spoke to managers about their experience and what they found and how they were aligned as an ally in this, you know, shoulder to shoulder. And they spoke with knowledge and passion about what they've seen and what they want to do to put it right. And for me, that put it instantly on a different level. It wasn't that we were sheep dipping a load of managers and telling them how rubbish they were. We were saying, we've seen it, we know it, we're all in this together. And I think that, for me, whilst there's been many standout moments, Quajo, Hugh, you know, the Lego game, you know, the conversations we've had, the managers' conferences, the customer crew that's fallen out of that all happened because leaders stepped up and did something different that showcased, we're going to do this and we're serious about it.
On the topic of standout moments, I mean, you've already named a few, Vicky. What would you say, Nina and Nick, was other standout moments for you, whether huge or small?
I think I've got 3. So I think the first one that really rocked me and rocked several others, I think, not in a good way. When I talk about rock, I'm not talking about an American comedy film here. I'm talking that made me go, wow, was the customer panel that you designed as part of the launch sessions with the managers. And I think just to hear our customers talking about us and the way that you teased that out of them so that they were not worried about saying in front of 80, 100 people negative things, and you were talking to them and made them feel that was a safe and intimate space for them to be able to be really open and honest. But for them to, you know, to describe us as you know, B&M bargains as opposed to wanting us to be like John Lewis, that's really hard to hear that. But you knew it was right. That was right at that time. And I remember that was a pivotal moment because I remember looking around the room as that was said, and you could hear the gasps as people literally took breath and went, wow. And that was a standout moment. I think the second standout moment was obviously when Nina phoned me up on a Friday afternoon when I was on the train on the way back from some far-flung part of Yorkshire to tell me that we were inviting Quajo along to a session. And I was like, right, that wasn't what I was expecting. I need the weekend to process that. But I think it was probably a little different to that. But I think you know it was such a great call to do that, because when Quajo sat there and you just heard sort of firsthand his story of his life, but also how he, going back to what Nina said about the storytelling ability of what he sees and what customers experience, I just thought was so powerful. And again, you brought that level of trust and disruption and the way that you handled that, because I think that was the first time Quajo had actually come and spoken to a housing association. I think prior to that, he'd made it very clear that he was going to keep himself separate. I understand that as an activist, but that was the first time that he really became involved in that. And on the subject of getting really sort of great people in, I think Nina mentioned before about Hugh Brayshaw was just the right person at the right time. And it was one of those moments where you just go, yes, there is still a lot more to do, but actually there is a way and a route through this. So I think they're the two. The final one, and Vicky stole my thunder on that, was the challenges. And I think I saw people who, some of them had never met one of our customers. So some of them actually spending time with our customers or spending time living through the customer lens, I thought was incredibly powerful. And how people embrace that, I think, was great. But I think it was the reverberation, the ripple effect that had is still, even now, going through the business. And certainly I know I picked the card that was to follow up with customers who'd had a complaint with us. So I got a list of 20 complaints that had all been closed off, or we thought had been closed off. And without telling anybody where I was going, I randomly chose from that list and went to see those customers. And that was really pivotal for me. Just sat there and I just thought, we've dealt with the complaint, but these customers have not been made to feel positive as part of the process. They've gone through a process, but they haven't felt special, loved. How I feel when I deal with those very few organisations and businesses who do make me feel like that. So that was a turning point for me, really, in terms of that. So, yeah, they're my sort of three standout moments. So far, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of the rest of the programme. I'm sure there is, yeah.
Anything to add to that, Nina?
I'm going to say, I'm not sure I can sort of come up with another three, because I think, we're going to share some of the same. The only one really to add for me, I suppose, was just the kind of realisation when you saw pennies sort of dropping in the room. Because quite a few of the sessions I've taken quite a, stand back and observe sort of role. And I think with probably particularly the Hugh Brayshaw session, just sort of watching the reactions from people in the room who probably thought by that point in the programme, well, what else is there to cover? I think we've got the message, and we just want to, we are a very sort of activist organisation in terms of people just want to get on with it and then, take the brief and off we run. And it's a big commitment for people taking time out, a whole day out to invest in your own development is something that, we recognise is needs planning and needs, some commitment from people. So at the start of that day, I watched the room and kind of got the vibe. And then by the end of the day, the energy in the room, the sense you could just see on people's faces of, I've really got something out of this. And I, that always brings me a lot of joy. I mean, you kind of see that change in someone's demeanour as that their learning is kind of cemented in for the day. And I think there's been a lot of follow-up conversations and discussion outside of the room, which you can sort of sense is going on around the organisation. So, yeah.
And I think you've helped people to feel uncomfortable in a supportive kind of way, because as you guys know, by being uncomfortable comes kind of change, comes that learning. But you can make people feel uncomfortable and punished and kind of cast aside, but feeling uncomfortable and supported with a way forward is an art, isn't it?
Yeah.
What about from your perspective? Because you've put a huge amount of investment into planning and thinking this through. But what's been the highlight for you, Melissa? Because you've been really part of this journey.
Seeing the vision come to reality. So going back to the initial planning meeting that we had and discussing ideas around the table and then seeing those come into fruition, for me was like, wow, this is really powerful. Definitely the conferences, hearing from the customers directly. What you've already said, I think for me, it's the storytelling that has come from it. So everybody's had an experience, whether firsthand or what they've heard from another colleague. And that storytelling and how we've kind of drawn that out of people and then they've gone on and shared it. That for me has been, that's what's powerful about it. It's the experiences that have been had and people will continue to share those. And it's also taken people from, as you said, Vicky, never connecting with an external customer to now they do that on a regular basis. The amount of colleagues I've heard say, I'll continue this, I'm going to do this quarterly. They never would have done that before. If they're in finance and they're, you know, in their environment, but never yet customer facing, to hear them say every quarter. And what we did at the end of every session was make everybody stand up and do a commitment to. So it wasn't just, this is what I'll do. It was, I commit to doing this. And we wanted that accountability as well amongst colleagues. So that for me, seeing everything come together, being delivered, seeing the impact has been really powerful.
Okay. Can I ask you a question? And I guess, you know, it's really useful for us from a sort of an outside-in perspective. You know, you've obviously been working with us for, over 12 months now on our development of the programme. So what do you think, what have you observed from where we started to where we've got to? And what do you think are some of the things that we need to really make sure we're still focusing on?
I think there was a hopeful shift, and I remember the first session which we did with heads of service, and there was friction. There was there was tension. There was there was pushback, but it was about trust the process. And then there was another session where it was post challenges. I think it was post challenges, and you saw almost lenses changing. You saw people's vocabulary changing, and you saw their approach to even the learning change. They were kind of leaning in, And then when we got to the Hugh Brayshaw one, it was just different, So you saw people literally buying into and becoming far more engaged in the whole thing. So that was, and obviously I've only dealt with heads and directors, But every time you saw, okay, it's working. And it was really interesting because the last session, which was risky, Lego and Hugh Brayshaw, you understand? That's a big risk, you understand? Okay, okay. But the combination worked so well because, again, one of the problems with heads of service is that they don't often work together. But that exercise, that 1 hour where they had to do things together, I thought it kind of brought people together in such a way, which was incredible. And then put you on top of it. So I think I have been I've had this kind of smile in terms of, God, it's working. It's working because you're seeing people shift. You're seeing people respond differently, and you're seeing more cohesion. Because I think from the first session, there was tension. There were people, but there was tension. But I think the cohesion that has evolved, in those spaces has been incredible. So that's for me. What do you need to do? I think it's about it's ensuring that you don't get complacent. It's ensuring that actually what is the next step? Because like you said, if this journey is to continue, what is the evolution of the development of leaders, that they can never ever take their foot off the pedal, that they can never get comfortable? How do we take their learning to an even higher level so that actually, because to become the best requires a mindset shift, which is constantly evolving. And the minute you allow people to plateau, you'll lose it. So for me, it's about actually keep every leader should be constantly stretched, because the minute you stop stretching a leader, in my opinion, you become a good manager.
I'm sure my colleagues around the table are delighted to hear you telling me to stretch them even further. So yeah, I'll take that away. I can with pleasure.
No problem.
I think we've touched on it so far. I think colleagues are sitting up. They've heard, what we're planning to do. They know it's not going anywhere. They recognise it's still a journey, that we've still got, things to do, things to shift across the organisation, how we work with each other, some of our systems, some of our processes, some of the things that came out loud and clear in the conferences and the kind of manager sessions. But that being said, they're seeing what leaders and, managers have called green shoots across the organisation, that we are a big organisation, 850 people doing, I can't even count how many unique job roles, working in 100 miles, up and across. So actually to bring about that change, to stop us in our track and change is it's quite a feat. And for managers to say they're seeing their colleagues question things, ask how they can do things differently, push against some, boundaries and start implementing things that are, not massively disruptive, but are going to make a difference to kind of customers. And I think that is really key for us as an organisation, and how we're seeing each other as the internal customers, that kind of colleague obsession. For me, that's been the biggest shift that I've seen, that's going to bring about the change in colleagues and managers. With our customers and customer feedback, it came out last week in customer crew, when they've said, we've been working with a changing panel of customers, and from the outset, it was always, well, you're not quite there yet. When we asked them, are we customer obsessed? And last week they said, we can see it. We're starting to feel it. We're starting to, by doing this, by having us in to speak to your HR team, to speak to your finance team, to speak to your IT team, it shows how serious you are as a business. And we're starting to see it. We're starting to almost feel it. It's not consistent, and by no means are we there. But actually the fact that we've stopped and turning the organisation, for me, is a big change.
I think that was to summarise it. I think that everybody accepts that culture doesn't change overnight. It's a journey, and it's a long journey. So even at the end of this programme, there's still, as Akin has put the challenge down, there's still a long way that we need to keep going. But I think I can see that shift in mindset. There are more of our colleagues now who are looking at things through a customer lens rather than organisational or a transactional lens. There are more of our colleagues now who are not just doing the job that they need to do, but are actually starting to do what I class as the added value elements that sit around that. From a customer point of view, I think for this programme, I think it's more revolutionary for colleagues. For customers, it's evolutionary. So I think they start to see things gradually changing. And I think if you look at some of our satisfaction measures, we talked earlier about perception, but perception is reality. Our satisfaction measures are improving. But I think the bit where I've really seen a difference is on our Trustpilot comments, not just the scores, but the comments that are there. Trustpilot 2 years ago was a bit of a car crash for us. We were not in a great place. Mm-hmm. That's not engineered. That's people choosing to put their feedback there in their own time. And what has been really noticeable is how our customers are talking about now the way that people are dealing with them and how they feel. It's going back to that point really around what did this program initially set out to change. So still a way to go, but
you can
see the tide has definitely shifted.
Uh-huh. The other thing that I would add is, and I've never had this in my entire learning and development career, you know what I'm going to say, Melissa, we had people turning up to sessions that they weren't booked onto. Not have we had to chase our managers and our colleagues. They turned up and they weren't on the list. Yeah. We welcome them because obviously it's inclusive.
As we do.
But I've never had that in my entire career.
Yeah.
And stayed till the end.
Yeah.
And still was talking amongst themselves, even when the session had ended. That is always a good sign.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So what's next? And I would see you for customer obsession. What's the next steps and where do you see things going in the future?
I think we said earlier on in the session, it's not something that we're ever going to get to the finish line, because the closer we do get, the more we probably need to still do. So I think we're certainly using this as a marathon, not a sprint. We've done some really intensive work with our management population and our leaders, and we've come to I suppose a sort of natural point in the process where the feedback that we've had most recently from our senior leadership team is been fantastic. We've got a lot of tools that we need to really start looking at how we put into practice, and I think there's quite a different approach for different parts of the business now that we've started to really get a sense of consistency around our sort of definition of customer obsession and what we all need to do individually as well as collectively. So some really focused work now going on in business areas, and we've involved our sort of whole people team now in starting to really partner with leadership teams in different parts of the organisation to really look at what's still getting in your way, what don't you have a plan for, what do you need to be doing differently, what are some of the blockers and barriers for your particular business area. So we're kind of running with that for the time being. But what we don't want to lose sight of is that momentum, and there is real value. We do always put a lot of weight on bringing the team together, sharing experiences, and I think going through that learning as a group has really enabled us to have a better level of conversation, a different level of conversation. So probably the next intervention is going to need to be something a bit unexpected and a little bit very Yorkshire, a little bit kind of disruptive in some way, because otherwise we're going to hit a plateau, aren't we? And we can't afford to do that. So
Absolutely.
So lots of thinking to do. But I want the next intervention to feel like it. It's a quadruple espresso coffee. So I guess it's going to be
I've actually got a crazy idea.
Well, you need. I was going to say, it sounds like your barista skills are now needed.
I don't know how many times I've started getting excited about something, and you said I've got a crazy idea. So I think on that note, we'll leave you to have to
Bring forward those crazy ideas.
Put forward some thoughts on what might that look like. But it definitely needs to be something that people are not expecting.
Yeah.
And something
excited training Friday night.
Oh yeah,
You
may pull the emergency cord.
That makes the rest of the carriage go quiet. And go, who's he talking to?
Who is it?
Love that.